Okay, you guys. Hey, YouTube. Pears is what we're doing today. I have a neighbor who every year brings me his surplus pears. Can you believe I have probably 4 times this much out in the garage to do today? So I thought I would show you how to can pears in extra light syrup because we don't like a lot of sugar in ours. And these are gorgeous. And I'm going to be putting these in pints this year just to save some time because I usually do half pints and that's twice as many jars. So let me get an apron. Check out my shirt. It's on Amazon. I'll put it down below. I'll be right back. Let's check it out. I am going to start by rinsing all of these because he just dropped them off in great big boxes in the driveway yesterday. Thank you, Paul. Oh my goodness. And I need to peel half and core these. And I do have a fancy dandy peeler. These are really firm, so I think we might use that. I'll show you a really cool peeler that I got 100 years ago from probably Pampered Chef. But I'll show you a quick way to peel these if you have the right peeler. And I'm going to be working out of this book, which is one of 2 books that I have for canning. I only have 2, and they're the only books I've ever needed. I have been canning since 1992. So go check this book out if you've never canned. This is a great one to start with. Okay, let's talk about some of the tools you're going to need. We are going to be water bath canning these, which is super easy. If you're just starting canning, start with water bath stuff. It's much easier. I'm going to use this pot to put the pears in to cook because they're going to be packed warm in warm syrup. So we're going to have lots of pots going. We're going to be cooking, getting them warm in the syrup in this, and then putting the syrup over them. We have a canning pot here, but it's not going to be pressure canning. So you can use a pot like this. You don't have to have a canning pot for this, as long as it's deeper than your jars. You want water covering them by 2 inches. I set them on a rack that comes with a canning pot down in the bottom. So we'll fill that with water here in a little bit to get it warming up, because that's going to need to be boiling once the jars go in. We're going to be using pint jar, regular mouth jars, and these have been run through the dishwasher on a sanitized cycle, so they're already very, very clean. You are going to be using non-reusable canning caps, and I'm going to revert back to my old habit and get these warm before I put them on the jars. I've tried a few rounds here this summer where I haven't got them warm. I've just put them right on the jars, and everything has sealed more or less, but I have had a couple things that didn't seal, and I usually never have that. So I'm going back to getting these warm. You don't have to, but I am. I'm going to be using reusable rings. You will also need a canning funnel because you're going to be pouring things in there, and look how easy that makes it. You're going to be using a jar lifter, which will come with most canning sets, and you're going to have that to get these in and out of the hot water. I am going to be using one of these gorgeous little strainers to pull the fruit out of the hot syrup, and for when you get the lids out of the hot water, which I will be doing with these, magnet. And I'll show you a trick about that when we get to that part in the video. And probably most canning kits that you buy these days will have something called a bubble freer, aka a butter knife. We're going to be using that once the jars are filled. I'll show you a trick too, because we're going to be putting them in boiling water bath and the jars will be covered with water. Even when I pressure can, if you're going to have jars in water, if you have hard water, put just a splash, not even measured, just glug glug, a splash of white vinegar in the water that the jars are going into in the water bath, and you won't get that white film that is on the jars when they come out of the water and cool off. You'll find a lot of times the jars will have this dusty sort of white that you have to wipe off because it's just basically mineral deposit from your hard water, which we have very hard water. And I've been using this forever and it doesn't happen. If you put vinegar in the water a little bit, you won't have to wipe all your jars off afterwards. So I'm going to go back to the sink and rinse and get the pears all ready, and then I'll show you my really cool peeling. It actually will peel, core, and slice apples and pears, anything that type of fruit. Super cool tool. So see if it still works. I've had it for probably 20 years. So let's do that. I'm going to go rinse some pears and I'll be right back. And to rinse these off, I'm just going to use a little bit of a vegetable brush and cool water, and I just do them right over the bowl in the sink and set them aside. We are going to be peeling them, but I just like to know that they've been brushed off, just for any outside dust and whatnot that has gotten on them. And if you don't have a giant bowl like this, highly recommend getting one. You can't believe how many things I use this for. I have mixed up batches of food. I use it for fruit. Today I'm going to use it to put all of the peelings in and carry out to the chickens, and I use it to bring stuff up from the garden. Like, this is just kind of the all-purpose bowl. I've used it to mix up giant batches of potato salad. It's definitely the coolest bowl ever, although I don't have anywhere to store it, so it ends up spending a lot of its life in the garage attic. Isn't that cool? I mean, hi, how are ya? So there are the beautiful pears. That's a whole sink full. I have probably four times this much to do today. So you're seeing the fancy version, and once I'm done filming this, I'm going to put on regular house clothes, take off my makeup, and dive into the rest of it. So let's go see about how to peel these. You can peel them with a peeler, but I'm hoping that my fancy little tool will still work. Let's go see. And this scary medieval looking contraption is what I bought ages ago, and it has lasted decades of peeling different fruits. So we're going to get this set up, but before we do that, we're going to talk about the Fruit Fresh product, because I cannot imagine doing pears or apples without using this. And I know you can use probably lemon juice, but I've never done it. So get some of this. I just get it at the grocery store. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon. If you can, I'll put a link down below. This is going to be a teaspoon per cup of cold water that the fruit is going to sit in briefly before you put it in hot syrup. So I'm going to get this made. I need to get the syrup made, but this is just to show you this. So this is 5 cups of water, and we're going to put 5 teaspoons of Fruit Fresh in it. A tablespoon, which if you didn't know is 3 teaspoons, so we're going to do that. 3, and then 4, 5, and I'm going to give that a stir, and I'll use that as long as I can, as long as it stays not gunky from the pears, if that makes sense. So we're going to mix that up with a whisk really quick and leave that to sit while we get some of these peeled and cored and halved, and then we'll put them in there. But I think you don't want to let them sit in this for more than like 5 minutes, so it's pretty brief. It's just a dunk to keep the edges from browning while they're sitting in between doing things with them. All right, if you can get a closer view of this, this thing is pretty amazing. It is a Pampered Chef product, so if you know someone, or is Pampered Chef still a thing? If it is, and if they have this, get this. This is the coolest thing, and it's metal, and it has lasted literally probably 20 years, and it still looks the same. See the wicked little prongs on the end, and you've got a little deal so you can sort of clamp it onto your space, and I happen to have a cutting board that works just fine for that, so we're going to go ahead and tighten it on, and you want it to be on there tight because you're going to be doing this. So I clamp it on as tight as I can. All right, so here is this lovely tool, and if you're like me and you keep everything in a junk drawer, you will still have a 20-year-old little wrench. What we're going to do is, this would be a slicing setup, but we're going to release that right here and pull this all the way back. I just did one, so I've got some pears on here. And what we're going to do with this little we don't want these sliced, we just want them peeled, so we're going to release that little nut and just put that down out of the way. And we're going to take a pear like this, and pears are kind of funky and offset, but try and get it as centered as you can. And you can pull this down out of the way. It's spring-loaded, so you've got a little holder. You can pull the little peeler out of the way and just use those prongs. Do not impale your hand, because it is possible to do. And this particular type of machine contraption will not work with overly ripe pears. They'll just fall apart on here. So this is going to work really well because these pears are very freshly picked. There's your little slicing apparatus right there, and all you're going to do is start turning this. Check this out. It follows the shape of the pear. See if I can get it to do the whole thing. So as the pear comes around the blade, and you're going to have some oddball pieces you may have to still hit with your peeler, but this is going to save you a lot of time. And that will just follow the shape of the pear around. And in a perfect world, it should take off all or most of the peel. Check that out. So you don't have to sit here with a peeler and do all of these. So you pull it off, and then you can cut this in half and get the core out. before we work on getting the rest of the pears peeled and cut up, I'm going to start the syrup. And this is one batch, and I'm going to need multiple batches of this. But for my light syrup that I like to use, I will do 5.5 cups of water, just tap water. I don't buy distilled water. I never have in all my life. And this is 1.5 cups of organic sugar. And you can go down as low as like 1/2 cup of sugar if you want ultralight syrup. And pears are really sweet, so you could. What I'm going to do is just put this over a medium-high heat and kind of stir it until the sugar dissolves. And I want to bring this up to a boil, and then this can sit. And the pears are going to go in this before they go in the jars. And while that syrup is getting up to a boil, I'm also going to put water in the big stock pot or canning pot. It's going to be the hot water bath, and get this warming up so that when everything is ready, this water is already hot so the jars can go right in it. And when someone tells you I spent all day in the kitchen canning, they're not messing around. It's been forever. I mean, obviously it's taken me more time today because I had to clean up everything for you guys, but this is a slow process. And it's enjoyable, but it definitely will slow you right down. Like, you can listen to a podcast or something while you're out here working, which I will do. I'll probably listen to some YouTube videos. But it's time consuming. You gotta wait for things to boil. You have to peel and slice and chop and do and treat and make syrups and then wait for the processing time. So a lot of, especially if you're pressure canning, you're sitting here watching the pot. So yes, all day in the kitchen when you're canning is definitely a thing. And here's where I'm going to add the vinegar. And again, it's just kind of eyeball it, but for our water, I'll just give it a good splash. And that keeps that hard water deposit from starting to build up on your jars. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of a regular peeler and just get rid of the bits of peel that the cool Pampered Chef contraption didn't get rid of. And there's not a lot, but at least you didn't have to stand here and peel this whole fruit. So just get rid of that little bit of peel that's left. And then I like to cut them into pieces. So I'm going to cut them in half and then in quarters and then cut those quarters in half. So you're getting chunks. And these are going in the fruit fresh solution so that they're not going to get brown edges while they're waiting for the rest of the pear to get processed. So we're going to cut them in half once. Then I cut the half in half. Sorry, I'm left-handed, so I don't know if you can see all this. And I know it's not right to cut towards your hand, but everyone does it. So cut the little core out, cut that in half, and then you have some gorgeous chunks that can go in your jars. And we're going to put them right in that solution to wait for just a little bit. You don't want them to be in there for longer than 5 minutes, I think is the kind of the rule. And once they've been in the water for up to 5 minutes, so that you're not going to have any brown edges, I just pull them out with the little handy strainer, and then they're fine to sit in a bowl for a little while, but make sure you let them drain. You don't want any of that to get involved with the canning process. I just put them in their own bowl, waiting to go in the syrup. Once I have enough to make a batch, then I'll put those all in the syrup at the same time. So before we go any further, I'm going to show you the one trick I have always used all my life canning, and this summer I quit doing it, and I don't know that it matters if you get your lids warm or not, but I always have. So if you are, here is a little trick. You're going to be using the magnet to get them out of a little pot of hot water that I have on the back of the stove here, but you will find if you put them in, they come stacked like that, and they're kind of all fitted together, and they're hard to get apart. And if you pick up some in the water, you're going to get 2. And if you do that and you try and get them apart, you'll get a little burst of hot water that will make you uncomfortable. So what I've learned over the years is put them in the hot water, and to get them out with the magnet and make it easier on yourself, put them in one alternating each way. So you're going to go one face down, one face up, one face down, and so on. And then when they're in the water like this, so they're facing, they're not locked together kind of in that fitted way they come in the little box. Then when you go to get them out of the water, they slide apart. And you won't have that little vacuum seal that you'll get when they're together fitted like that. So that's just a little handy Aunt Steph tip for you. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in the water while I am finishing peeling and getting everything ready for the syrup. So those are in a little pot of hot water back there, and when I'm ready to can, they will be nice and warm and ready to go on the jars. And I don't think you have to do this because like I said, I've just done most of my summer without putting these in warm water, but I gotta say, I have felt like I've had to kind of keep a sharper eye on the sealing process after they come out of the pot, and really kind of watch and make sure that they sealed. And I don't know if that's related, but what if it is? So I'm gonna go ahead and just keep using the hot water from now on, because I've never had, usually I have, anytime I'm canning, I have very, very few that come out on the towel and sit and cool, and they didn't all seal. And this year, when I haven't been getting the jar lids warm, I've noticed that it's like, are they gonna seal or not? So get them warm. I mean, that's maybe not a tip that even gets advised anymore on canning kits, but if it's not being advised anymore, because my learning goes way back to I don't know when. So get your lids warm and see if you have better luck with your seal. Just gonna say that. I'm just throwing that out there. Moving on. So these have all been dipped in the solution and drained, and they're in nice pieces, so they're kind of serving sized. And I might pour them down into the hot syrup, but I don't want to splash it everywhere, so we're going to kind of do this. But we're going to get all of these in the syrup, and it's just over kind of a medium-low. See if I can do this without splashing myself and you. That worked. Okay, carefully. Those are all in the syrup. And we're just going to set a timer for 5 minutes, just so they get a chance to warm up before they go in the jars. And I just give them a little stir now and then, just to make sure they're kind of all getting an equal amount of time under, under the syrup. Something fun you can do, and I usually will, especially with this many pears, like mix it up a little, and I'll make different flavors. So this first batch is just plain. They're just going to be plain pears in syrup. But you can add almond flavoring to them if you want, like an amaretto pear. You can do cinnamon. I always do amaretto and cinnamon, both. So I'll do almond pears and I'll do cinnamon pears, and I have been known to put a splash of like a liqueur in them. You can put, you can make drunken pears. I've never done it, but it looks like you use like wine and sherry and stuff. I haven't tried those, but I guess if you like that kind of thing. But I like the idea of maybe a little bit of rum. So you could do like a rum-based, splash of rum flavoring in there. And I would say have a little strainer on hand, because I'm going to want to strain the syrup, because we don't want any of the little particles of pear that might have gotten into the syrup right here. We don't want to transfer that into the jars. Okay, so we're going to do the canning funnel, clean jar. A lot of recipes will say use a hot jar. These aren't hot because they were already washed and sterilized, and I didn't get them warm before I put them in. So I would have to say, honestly, I don't always use hot jars. So sorry, but it does work. We're going to take the pears up out of the syrup and just drop them right down in the jar. Give the funnel a little shake to get them down in there if you need to. And we want to have a 1/2 inch headspace, generous 1/2 inch headspace, whatever that means. So I'm going to call that, because that one on the top is a little bit funny. I'll put a smaller one down in there later, but that's what that looks like for now. And I'm going to go ahead and finish filling. This will hold, I think 9 pints will fit in. I know, but I don't remember. I think 9 pints will fit in the bottom of that canning pot. So I'm going to finish filling these, and then I'll show you how we get the caps on. And that just got 15 gorgeous jars of pears. So, and this is what's left from what I showed you in the beginning. This is how many I haven't peeled and dealt with yet. So we are going to have a lot of pints of pears. Oh my goodness. So the magic of video, I just swapped out my syrup and made this into a hot water bath and put the syrup in a smaller pot. You can plan, if you want to get technical, you can plan for, I think, 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of syrup to go in each pint jar. So we're going to put a strainer over your canning funnel, because we don't want to catch any bits, if we can avoid it, of the syrup going in. And we're going to just and I use just a measuring cup. You can use a ladle, whatever works. Make sure you don't tip your funnel over, and just watch the syrup come up. And you want to have 1/2 inch headspace, which just means from the liquid, from the top of the jar down to the liquid needs to be 1/2 inch. And I don't like to overfill them too much, so I'll just watch that, and we'll top them up as we get the right measurement. But for now, I just want to get the syrup over all of these and move on to the lids. So before you top up any of these or do any adjusting with the level of the liquid, we're going to take your bubble freer, or in my case a butter knife, and just, you want to go down inside the jar and just jostle everything around a little. You're just wanting to release any air bubbles that may be trapped, and you can sometimes see the air actually bubbling up that's trapped underneath little various pieces of fruit as they are in there. You know, they're not settled entirely with each other. So we want every jar to be jostled around a little, and you'll see everything kind of settle. And after that is done, that is when I will, and if you're not sure what a 1/2 inch looks like, don't, you know, I'm not good at eyeballing stuff at all, and I've heard that the new canning sets actually come with a little measuring thing. I just pull out a measuring tape and I will literally put a tape on it, because oops, that one bubbled all the way. Got liquid everywhere. Because if you have too shallow of a headspace, if you have more than 1/2 inch, it's all right. But if you only have a 1/4 inch and you're wanting a 1/2 inch headspace, you risk having overpressure sort of happening, and you will boil the liquid up out of your jar, and you'll find that they have leaked out in the canning process, and you'll have jars that, you know, come out of the pot with less syrup in them than went in, and that also risks you getting food particles along the edge of this and messing up the seal of that cap that's sitting on the jar to seal. So you will have jars that don't seal, and you'll find it was because food got pushed and sort of forced out of that vacuum and got up under the jar lid. So those have all been sort of jostled around, and this, I'll just say, I made a triple batch of that syrup that we talked about in the beginning, and this made 15 pints. And that's all that's left. So barely, sort of barely enough. I want just a little bit more on a couple of these. And instead of, you know, freaking out and making more syrup, oh no, I need to make more syrup. If they're this close, and this probably goes against some kind of rule, but if they're this close to the top and I need more water, I will just top them up, in this case, with a little bit of water, because this is a syrup that was sugar and water, and it doesn't need to be, it's not a very specific blend. Like pickling and things do not mess with the ratios, but with this, if you're doing syrup that's sugary and sweeter or less sweet, I can add a little bit of water to this and it's not going to hurt, which is really nice because I don't have to freak out and make a bunch more syrup. So we're just going to top these up so that they're all headspace to about a 1/2 inch. And I'll probably take a little measuring tape and just double check my eyeballing here, because I'm not the best eyeballer. Is that a word? So once we have the level of liquid in all of these at the 1/2 inch headspace or whatever you're gonna need, I take a wet paper towel. You can use a damp washcloth too, but you wanna go around and just make sure that the rim of each jar has been wiped clean, so you have no particles to interrupt the seal with the compound that's on those caps. We do not want to interfere with the contact point on the jar. And it goes without saying, but if you're using jars over and over the way I do, I've used jars for literally decades, same jars, make sure that the rim of your jars has 000 nicks and dings, because that jar will not seal if there's a nick in it. So if there's a nick, I'll actually like put a little bit of paint or a little Sharpie marker or something on it and use that jar for just some random thing, not canning ever again, because it'll just never seal. And this is where this has been sitting on the back of the stove the whole time, and these are the caps, and they're in hot water. It's not boiling. It's like warm, low hot, you know, it's not hot. It's very warm, but not hot. And we're going to take your little magnet, and see, those are together, but you can slide them apart and you don't burn your fingers. So we're going to put a cap on each one of these jars. And hopefully the amount of time this is taking me is giving that other water bath time to come up to boiling, so these can all go in at the same time and process as two big, you know, a big double batch on the stove. And just judging from how many pears are left, I'm going to be canning pears. This will be a 2-day process at least. I'm not sure if I'll make pear butter. We don't need, you know, we don't need 101 jars of pears, so I'm not sure how many we're going to get here. And the next thing you're going to do is add your rings, and you don't need to screw these on so tight. Just, you want to put them on until you're finger tight, and just like give it a little nudge. They're not going to seal because you screwed them on so tight. Just put it to finger tight where it stops. You know, give it that, and then just give it a little push past. You're just wanting to keep it where it's holding firm contact on the jar while it's in the water bath or the pressure canner. But what's going to make it seal is actually the process of the hot water bath and the temperature changes and the pressure changes and all the sciencey stuff that I don't know. I just know it works. I don't know how it works. I just know that it works. So we're going to just get all the lids on, and then these will go in 2 boiling water baths. Before we put these in really quick, let's talk about, you need to know your altitude. One little sciencey thing you do need to know. Find out what your altitude is where you are, because if you just follow the canning book and process the amount of time that it says, you might get improperly sealed jars. I know my altitude means I need to add 5 minutes to what the book says. The book says these need to go in for 20 minutes, so these will be going in for 25 minutes here. So don't just go by the book, know what your altitude is and make adjustments, and you will be doing the same thing when you're pressure canning, but that's a different topic. So we're gonna do jar lifter, and they're just gonna go right in the hot water bath. So I've got some already in that pot right there, and these are gonna go down in what should be a boiling water bath. And you want to make sure when you're done and they're in the pot, you want to make sure that that water level is 2 inches above the top of the jar lids. So we've got 8 in one pot and 7 in another. And since this one is already basically up to boiling, I'm going to go ahead and set this timer on this pot for 25 minutes. As soon as it really brings it back, it needs to be boiling. And we'll go 25 minutes. And this one will be right behind it. And then when they are done processing for 25 minutes, I'll actually turn the heat off and let these sit and just cool down in it for a 5-minute cool down before we pull them out of the water. So I'll see you back here in about 30 minutes. Okay, those just sat for 5 minutes. So we're gonna take the jar lifter, and you just wanna go down and you don't wanna jostle the ring at all if you can help it. So I try to go down and just get the neck of the jar, pull it straight up. Look how beautiful those look. And I just carry them over and set them carefully on a towel where they're going to sit and cool overnight before we do any more messing with them. And as they sit, you may hear the very satisfying sound of the lids popping down as they seal. And because I didn't push these down into the jars and pack them in really tight, you can see there's some floating up of the fruit, and that is entirely normal. In 30 plus years of canning, I've never had that not be a thing. So it's a thing. It's not a mistake. It's just what they do. There you have some really, really pretty, perfect canned pears. And we'll let them sit overnight. And then tomorrow, these will be all sealed. We'll double check and make sure that the lids have popped down. And then we'll label them with the date on top. And they'll go in the pantry for snacking on this winter. Hope this inspires you to try canning your own pears at home. There is some time involved in the process, but they're definitely worth it, and they're so delicious. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.